to Fast Asleep with Gina Marie. Welcome to all who love classic short stories. I'm Gina, and Marie is out there checking on our keyword progress. If you haven't had a chance, maybe you could match up those 3 keywords Marie mentioned last week, radio, exposure, and meaty. Just match them up with their stories and put the answers in comments, and then maybe that'll get Marie off my back. Please? Thank you. And thank you for your likes, your other wonderful comments, and your subscriptions. You might want to keep track along with us of those subscriptions. We are growing. And if this is your very first week with us, you picked a good one. Welcome. Now, it's been a while since we've talked about this author. I just couldn't resist this story. The author, Ray Bradbury. Today's story, not science fiction. I know. He's known for unmatched storytelling of space and science in general. Yes, he's a winner of the Grand Master Award from the Science Fiction Writers of America, among his many other prestigious awards. I do not want to be corrected for that. But no, today's story could not be considered science fiction. Ray Bradbury wrote in many different genres. He wrote about everything, and he wrote for all of us, all ages, all walks of life, for over 70 years. Born in 1920, he started writing at age 14, when a script he submitted to a national radio show was actually produced and broadcast long before any of us were born. It was for George Burns and Gracie Allen, and he was never paid for it. He also never went to college because he had no money. "I believe in libraries," he said, "because most students don't have any money." He did grow up during the Great Depression, so he attended libraries 3 days a week for 10 years. That was his education, and he was proud of it. Bradbury was very interested in science, but he was fascinated with human behavior, and he loved writing about that. In his 2 most well-known works, you know them, Fahrenheit 451 and, oh yes, there's the Martian Chronicles. Ray created dilemmas. Oh, he loved deliberately upsetting us, his readers, and forcing us to take a hard look at our own moral beliefs. Nuclear fallout, colonization, and so many environmental issues. Bradbury used his great talent for fiction to criticize the problems he found within our society. He was a very influential man, and I have his very riveting story for you right now. Published in 1971. Tuck in, everybody, for Ray Bradbury's The Utterly Perfect Murder. It was such an utterly perfect, such an incredibly delightful idea for murder that I was half out of my mind all across America. The idea had come to me, for some reason, on my 48th birthday. Why it hadn't come to me when I was 30 or 40, I cannot say. Perhaps those were good years, and I sailed through them, unaware of time and clocks and the gathering of frost at my temples or the look of the lion about my eyes. Anyway, on my 48th birthday, lying in bed that night beside my wife, with my children sleeping through all the other quiet, moonlit rooms of my house, I thought, I will arise and go now and kill Ralph Underhill. Ralph Underhill, I cried. Who is he? 36 years later? Kill him? For what? Why, I thought, for what he did to me when I was 12. My wife woke an hour later, hearing a noise. Doug? She called. What are you doing? Packing, I said, for a journey. Oh, she murmured and rolled over and went to sleep. The porter's cries went down the train platform. The train shuddered and banged. See ya, I cried, leaping up the steps. Someday, called my wife, I wish you'd fly. Fly, I thought, and spoil thinking about murder all across the plains? Spoil oiling the pistol and loading it and thinking of Ralph Underhill's face when I show up 36 years late to settle old scores? Fly. Why, I would rather pack cross-country on foot, pausing by night to build fires and fry my bile and sour spit, and eat again my old mummified, but still living, antagonisms, and touch those bruises which have never healed. Fly. The train moved. My wife was gone. I rode off into the past. Crossing Kansas, the second night. We hit a butte of a thunderstorm. I stayed up until 4 in the morning, listening to the rave of winds and thunders. At the height of the storm, I saw my face, a dark room negative print on the cold window glass, and thought, where is that fool going? To kill Ralph Underhill. Why? Because. Remember how he hit my arm? Bruises. I was covered with bruises, both arms. Dark blue, mottled black, strange yellow bruises. Hit and run. Oh, that was Ralph. Hit and run. And yet, you loved him? Yes, as boys love boys, when boys are 8, 10, 12, and the world is innocent, and boys are evil beyond evil because they know what they do, but they do it anyway. So, on some secret level, I had to be hurt. We, dear fine friends, needed each other. I to be hit, he to strike. My scars were the emblem and symbol of our love. What else makes you want to murder Ralph so late in time? The train whistled, shrieked. Night country rolled by, and I recalled one spring when I came to school in a new tweed knicker suit, and Ralph knocking me down, rolling me in snow and fresh brown mud, and Ralph laughing, and me going home shame-faced, covered with slime, afraid of a beating, to put on fresh, dry clothes. Yes. And what else? Remember those toy clay statues you longed to collect from the Tarzan radio show? Statues of Tarzan and Kala the ape and Nurna the lion for just 25 cents. Yes, yes, beautiful. Oh, even now in memory, at the sound of the ape man swinging through green jungles far away, ululating. But who had 25 cents in the middle of the Great Depression? No one, except Ralph Underhill. And one day Ralph asked you if you wanted one of the statues. Wanted? You cried, yes, yes. Well, that was the same week your brother, in a strange seizure of love mixed with contempt, gave you his old but expensive baseball catcher's mitt. Well, said Ralph, I'll give you my extra Tarzan statue if you give me that catcher's mitt. Fool, I thought. The statue, it's worth 25 cents, and the glove costs $2. No fair. Don't. But I raced back to Ralph's house with the glove and gave it to him. And he, smiling a worse contempt than my brothers, handed me the Tarzan statue, and bursting with joy, I ran home. My brother didn't find out about his catcher's mitt and the statue for 2 weeks. And when he did, he ditched me when we hiked out in farm country and left me lost because I was such a sap. Tarzan statues, baseball mitts, he cried. That's the last thing I ever give you. And somewhere on a country road, I just lay down and wept and wanted to die. But I didn't know how to give up the final vomit that was my miserable ghost. The thunder murmured. The rain fell on the cold Pullman car windows. What else? Is that the list? No. One final thing, more terrible than all the rest. In all the years you went to Ralph's house to toss up small bits of gravel on his 4th of July, 6 in the morning, fresh, dewy window, or to call him forth for the arrival of dawn circuses in the cold, fresh blue railroad stations in late June or late August. In all those years, never once did Ralph run to your house. Never once in all the years did he, or anyone else, prove their friendship by coming by. The door never knocked. The window of your bedroom never faintly clattered and belled with a high-tossed confetti of small dusts and rocks. And you always knew that the day you stopped going to Ralph's house, calling up in the morn, that would be the day your friendship ended. You tested it once. You stayed away for a whole week. Ralph never called. It was as if you had died, and no one came to your funeral. When you saw Ralph at school, there was no surprise, no query, not even the faintest lint of curiosity to be picked off your coat. Where were you, Doug? I needed someone to beat. Where you been, Doug? I got no one to pinch. And you add up all the sins, but especially think on the last. He never came to my house. He never sang up to my early morning bed or tossed a wedding rice of gravel on the clear panes to call me down to joy and summer days. And for this last thing, Ralph Underhill, I thought, sitting in the train at 4 in the morning as the storm faded and I found tears in my eyes. For this last and final thing, for that, I shall kill you tomorrow night. Stay with me. I'll be right back. sins up, but especially think on the last. He never came to my house. He never sang up to my early morning bed, or tossed a wedding rice of gravel on the clear panes to call me down to joy and summer days. And for this last thing, Ralph Underhill, I thought, sitting in the train at 4 in the morning as the storm faded, and I found tears in my eyes. For this last and final thing, for that I shall kill you tomorrow night. Murder, I thought, after 36 years. Why, you're madder than Ahab. The train wailed. We ran cross country like a mechanical Greek fate carried by a black metal Roman fury. They say you can't go home again. That is a lie. If you are lucky and time it right, you arrive at sunset when the old town is filled with yellow light. I got off the train and walked up through Greentown and looked at the courthouse burning with sunset light. Every tree was hung with gold doubloons of color. Every roof and coping and bit of gingerbread was purest brass and ancient gold. I sat in the courthouse square with dogs and old men until the sun had set and Greentown was dark. I wanted to savor Ralph Underhill's death. No one in history had ever done a crime like this. I would stay, kill, depart, a stranger among strangers. How would anyone dare to say, finding Ralph Underhill's body on his doorstep, that a boy aged 12, arriving on a kind of time machine train, traveled out of hideous self-contempt, had gunned down the past? It was beyond all reason. I was safe in my pure insanity. Finally, at 8:30 on this cool October night, I walked across town, past the ravine. I never doubted Ralph would still be there. People do, after all, move away. I turned down Park Street and walked 200 yards to a single street lamp and looked across. Ralph Underhill's white 2-story Victorian house waited for me, and I could feel him in it. Oh, he was there, 48 years old, even as I felt myself here, 48, and full of an old and tired and self-devouring spirit. I stepped out of the light opened my suitcase, put the pistol in my right-hand coat pocket, shut the case, and hid it in the bushes where, later, I would grab it and walk down into the ravine and across town to the train. I walked across the street and stood before his house, and it was the same house I had stood before 36 years ago. There were the windows upon which I had buried those spring bouquets of rock in love and total giving. There were the sidewalks spotted with firecracker burn marks from ancient July 4ths when Ralph and I had just blown up the whole damned world, shrieking celebrations. I walked up on the porch and saw on the mailbox, in small letters, Underhill. What if his wife answers? No, I thought. He himself, with absolute Greek tragic perfection, will open the door and take the wound and almost gladly die for old crimes and minor sins somehow grown to crimes. I rang the bell. Will he know me? I wondered, after all this time. In the instant before the first shot, tell him your name. He must know who it is. Silence. I rang the bell again. The doorknob rattled. I touched the pistol in my pocket, my heart hammering, but did not take it out. The door opened. Ralph Underhill stood there. He blinked, gazing out at me. Ralph, I said. Yes, he said. We stood there, riven, for what could not have been more than 5 seconds, but many things happened in those 5 swift seconds. I saw Ralph Underhill. I saw him clearly, and I had not seen him since I was 12. Then he had towered over me to pummel and beat and scream. Now, he was a little old man. I'm 5'11", but Ralph Underhill had not grown much from his 12th year on. The man who stood before me was no more than 5 feet 2 inches tall. I towered over him. I gasped. I stared. I saw more. I was 48 years old, but Ralph Underhill, 48, had lost most of his hair, and what remained was threadbare gray, black, and white. Oh, he looked 60 or 65. I was in good health. Ralph Underhill was waxen, pale. There was a knowledge of sickness in his face, like he had traveled in some sunless land. He had a ravaged and sunk look. His breath smelled of funeral flowers. All this, perceived, was like the storm of the night before, gathering all its lightnings and thunders into one bright concussion. We stood in the explosion. So, this is what I came for? I thought. This, then, is the truth. This dreadful instant in time. Oh, not to pull out the weapon. Not to kill. No, oh no, but simply to see Ralph Underhill as he is in this hour. And that's all. Just to be here, stand here, and look at him as he has become. Ralph Underhill lifted one hand in a kind of gesturing wonder. His lips trembled. His eyes flew up and down my body. His mind measured this giant who shadowed his door. At last, his voice, so small, so frail, blurted out, "Doug?" I recoiled. "Doug?" he gasped. Is that you?" I hadn't expected that. People don't remember. They can't. Across the years, why would he know? Bother. Summon up. Recognize. Call. Oh, I had a wild thought that what had happened to Ralph Underhill was that after I left town, half of his life had collapsed. I had been the center of his world. Someone to attack, beat, pummel, bruise. His whole life had cracked by my simple act of walking away 36 years ago. Nonsense. Yet, some small crazed mouse of wisdom scuttered about my brain and screeched what it knew. You needed Ralph, but more. He needed you. And you did the only unforgivable, the wounding thing. You vanished. "Doug?" he said again, for I was silent there on the porch with my hands at my sides. "Is that you?" This was the moment I had come for. At some secret blood level, I had always known I would not use the weapon. I had brought it with me, yes, but time had gotten here before me, and age, and smaller, more terrible deaths. Bang! 6 shots through the heart. Oh, but I didn't use the pistol. I only whispered the sound of the shots with my mouth. With each whisper, Ralph Underhill's face aged another 10 years. By the time I reached the last shot, he was 110 years old. Bang! I whispered. Bang, bang, bang. Bang! His body shook with the impact. "You're dead." "Oh, God, Ralph, you're dead." I turned and walked down the steps and reached the street before he called, "Doug, is that you?" I did not answer, walking. "Answer me," he cried weakly. "Doug! Doug Spaulding! Is that you? Ah, who is that? Who are you?" I got my suitcase and walked down into the cricket night and darkness of the ravine, and across the bridge and up the stairs, going away. "Who is that?" he wailed. I heard his voice one last time, a long way off. I looked back. All the lights were on, all over Ralph Underhill's house. It was as if he had gone around and put them all on after I left. On the other side of the ravine, I stopped, on the lawn in front of the house where I had been born. And then I picked up a few bits of gravel and did the thing that had never been done, ever in my life. I tossed the few bits of gravel up to tap that window where I had lain every morning of my first 12 years. I called my own name. I called me down in friendship to play in some long summer that no longer was. I stood waiting just long enough for my other young self to come down to join me. Then, swiftly fleeing ahead of the dawn, we ran out of Greentown and back. Oh, thank you, dear Christ. Back toward now and today for the rest of my life. Introduction information for this episode is from Confronting the Uncomfortable with Ray Bradbury by Allison Schneider for The Fordham Ram. Music for this episode is Spiderweb's Enchantment by Peter de Graaf, Penumbra by Villemin, Dark Light by Jana Kuto and Jan Springet, and London, 1962 by Doug Thomas. Remember, you can reach me at fastasleepwithGinaMarie44@gmail.com, or you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. And please, keep us here for you with your comments, your likes, and your subscriptions. Thank you so much for listening. keyword. 12. Good night.